Hi guys, welcome to another review. So this one will be long, maybe an hour or so, we shall see. So this review will be about S1000RR, generically starting with model year 2012. So for those who don't know, a new bike is coming this year, will be shown to public soon, any day now. A completely new redesigned S1000RR with new engine and a new frame. This is what I consider to be a new bike, because this bike has been through its updates for, well, 3 times actually. So the first model of this S1000RR, pretty much as it is right now, came out with a different plastics and a little bit different bottom portion of a frame over here. Was released in 2009, but if you look at the parts, they start from 2008, so it was pre-produced per se 2008 and then released in 2009. So after that, in 2012 there was some update to the bike, and then in 2015 a little bit bigger update, and then in 2017 another update just to pass Euro 4 emissions pretty much. So with initial iteration of a bike starting from 2009 to 2011 was quite fresh, and I guess 2012 to 2014 was alright. And when 2015 came out, which integrated some of the bits from HP4, a model which we had some sort of kind of like exclusive edition, which at that time had this DDC, electronic damping in the suspension, and it also had some nice bits and pieces, especially in the competition version of it. Yeah, so that electronic DDC came into 2015 S1000RR model as an option, and then it went all the way to 2018 again as an option. Alright, so this bike specifically which you see right now, it's a model year 2018, and the differences between all of those bikes starting from 2009 to 2012, 2015 and up to now, well, kind of cosmetic. So you get the different fading, different color schemes, and then introduction of some useless features like heated grips and let's say the cruise control, as you can see in here. Some of the useful features which came out of HP4 as well, the adjustable traction control, which is good, I think. But I guess if you're looking to buy a used bike, and because a new one is coming, this will depreciate this type of bikes, because it will be considered to be like an older model, so more of them will be on the market wear. So you can easily, let's say, count on buying 2012 and up. The best way actually to look at 2013 and up, because in 2012, in the beginning of production, we had problems with conrod balls being not tightened correctly, and so we had to recall lots of engines, and you may get one if you're buying 2012 model, and that's not very good. Not too bad, but not very good, not ideal. If you're looking at 2013 and up, you will be safe. The difference also can be noted here. So in 2012, this part where the swing arm mount is, it looks pretty much the same, it's just positioned a bit higher by 3 mm on this bike. So if you're looking at 2012 bike, it will have additional nut in here. Starting from 2013, this is how it looks like. It's almost like flush with a mounting point. So this is how you can tell is it 2013 or 2012 bike. So if you see this type of a picture, then it's safe to buy, pretty much. In terms of the performance, 2012, 13, 14 models have a little bit less horsepower but more linear delivery of power and torque characteristics, much more per se nicer. And then in 2015 we added some power to the engine, but lost the, let's say, the characteristic, the power curve and the torque curves were not as nice as before, which still rideable, okay. I guess that was the price to pay for a couple of horsepowers at the top end, which you don't really notice much on a normal riding. These bikes, comparing to competitors, are extremely powerful. They ride very nicely. So you can find videos on YouTube easily when this bike will overpower on a drag race like R1M or even Kawasaki's S1000RR, no problem. Of course it depends on the rider as well, but yeah, generically very nice engines. So this is my second S1000RR. The first one I had was in 2012 model actually, and I did 30,000 kilometers on that one. So 30,000 kilometers, and it was ready for the major service, which would include valve adjustment, and I wanted to change chain to give sliders and sprockets for the chain, I mean the timing chain in the engine, because at about 20,000 kilometers I had to replace, there is a nut over here, you can see it, bolt actually, I don't know, is it a cap, threaded cap, which holds the chain tensioner. So it comes as a black cap when the bike is new, and a silver cap is something BMW recommends to install after, let's say, 20,000 kilometers. It used to be 30,000 kilometers, but I noticed my chain rattling on starts at about 20,000 kilometers, but I did a lot of track days with that one. That could be part of an issue with that. So I had to replace this bit with a silver cap. So I replaced the tensioner first, that didn't help, and then I replaced the cap to silver cap, and that kind of pushes the chain tension a little bit harder, and that solved the problem with rattling. And when I realized that at 30,000 that would be nice to change the chain and chain sliders. That again depends on how hard you ride the bike and things like that. But yeah, engine was really good, 30,000 kilometers, no problem. With, let's say, quite not very easy use of engine. So I can say engine quite reliable. Taking account what I had 2012 model, which were recalls were issued for. And I had this recall done. So what else I can say? So engine powerful, really good control. So what I prefer and like about S1000RR, comparing to other bikes, especially comparing to the Yamaha super sport bikes like R1, R1M, including those modern ones starting from 2015 and up, and especially to those 2009 and up, the throttle control is just incredible. It's so nicely balanced. So you can ride this bike slow, you can open and control the engine speed extremely well. The same with engine braking. It's very well done, thank you BMW. On Yamahas, when you open throttle it kicks, and yeah, so this is much nicer. So on 2012, so on this guy here, you see it's a completely electronic throttle. So there is a potentiometer in here, which gives just a resistance signal to the ECU, where you open the baffles, fly-by-wire system. So on the 2012 it was also fly-by-wire, but there were, like you could see here, cables going into a potentiometer which was located on the intake actually. And then, you know, that would give ECU a command. I'm not sure why that would be like this, it was stupid. We have fly-by-wire, this is better, but I guess we couldn't pass some tests maybe on this potentiometer here, so we decided to do it differently at that time. But instead of, like, except for having two additional cables going down towards the engine, the system works pretty much by the feel exactly the same. So, what else? Yeah, fairings. 2012 and 15 and up, we have different dashboards. So this dash has a bit more information. Again, I'm not sure how much of that is relevant, to be honest. But you can see here it has the information about how much traction control helped you in percentage, or how much it was engaged by in percentage. So in here you can see deceleration, acceleration, in meters per second, so how fast you're braking, basically, what is the deceleration rate. And I went up to 8 a lot, but I have not seen it going higher on that with my type of braking. You see a max lean angle right and left here, and the current lean angle right where at the top. Things like that. And you can connect the data loggers to this bike. It has ABS Pro. By when starting from 2012 and up, you can install like electronically plus one more block under the seat, and you can get cornering ABS as well as an option, but you have to pay for it. On these bikes it was a part of some package, I think. Right, so yeah, same goes for HP4. So HP4 has that sensor, but it had no cornering ABS, and at some point we released it for HP4 first, and then I noticed it was available for S1000RRs 2012 and up as well. So my point is, what buying 2012 bike as used bike, you can get pretty much what you get from this bike as a result. Just a different fairing, a little bit different operation of a traction control. But that's not essential unless you are some hardcore riding who uses ABS and traction control functionality a lot. There are little changes, but they are not dramatic per se. Alright, so those are the changes. Now, regarding the suspension, another difference between the bikes, like up to 2015, the bikes had this additional can at the bottom and a short exhaust here, even shorter than this one. But the can at the bottom was bigger, and in 2015 we went into like a straight through setup without this additional can, just the catalytic converters, high flow catalytic converters were just welded straight inside the pipes. And then starting from 2017 they had to go back to the same design as we used to have because of Euro 4 emission standard. So yeah, so the fairing on 2018 model, this bottom fairing is different to 2015-16 models, and yeah, exhaust obviously is different. Alright, so let's talk about the geometry and suspension. It's my favorite topics in sport bikes and any bikes actually. So this specific bike has a DDC, a dynamic damping control, and they are available also without damping, without electronic damping, without this dynamic damping control. Basically, if you just manual adjust suspension. So 2012 to 2015 had no DDC option, just standard suspension. From 2015 on up, you could order this suspension as part of the package. I think one of the packages we had. HP4 models 2013 and 14 had the DDC option. All of them were DDC bikes. Now if you have a DDC bike, you cannot really easily convert it to a manual adjust suspension because you need to remove that DDC option. And my local dealership says that they cannot reprogram bike just to remove that, DDC suspension option. So they advised me to buy a race calibration kit free, and then where you can do this checkbox, to disable DDC and convert it to Auckland suspension or whatever, WP, white power called, and something like that. So whatever you like, you can change, but you need to first spend about 1,300 euros on that race calibration kit, which kind of raises the cost of the whole conversion to some crazy numbers. So that's a DDC. So if you're looking for, if you understand at least something about suspension adjustment, or you plan to convert to some aftermarket suspension, I would advise you not to buy the bike with a DDC. Also, from Alpha Racing, as in Germany, there is a block, electronic replacement available for the DDC block, where you just swap internals of it to whatever they provide. And then the bike will forget what it had, a DDC suspension. However, it will forget just about the shock and the forks, but in reality it will still think what is DDC bike. So it's kind of like a trick, basically, to trick with you not to display not to display the error code on the front panel when DDC is disconnected. And I'm not really sure if a traction control would work correctly without proper data from the sensors and things like that. So that's a big question, is it a good option to go or not with that replacement block. However, that costs quite not too much. It's, I don't know, I don't remember exactly, it's 300 euros or something like that. But I'm not really sure. It's something around that. It's not very expensive. It's cheaper than buying calibration kit anyway to disable DDC. So DDC operation on this bike. So I cannot comment about HP4. I never had HP4. So on this specific bike, I can say for sure. But if I would have a manual bike with manual suspension adjustment, I would configure it better for me, for my riding style, comparing to what I can achieve with DDC, even though it had some adjustments too. Another thing is not to know about the DDC, and that applies to both HP4 and S1000RR starting from 2015 and up, is that you may connect a front sensor, because bike by default from the factory, it only comes with a rear suspension sensor, which is located right here. This is a sensor, this is a connecting rod to the swing arm. So when the swing arm moves, obviously that passes that movement to the sensor, and the sensor reads the position of where the swing arm is and how fast it's moving up and down and things like that. And when also it reads the cornering, like braking, deceleration, acceleration, g-forces, and it will adjust the suspension to whatever it thinks is optimal for that specific riding condition. Right, but in the front, as you can see in stock, well, you won't see it here because they already have a sensor, but in the stock configuration, this bike has no front sensor. So what motorcycle does, it just reads the rear suspension sensor, it tries, and the deceleration, acceleration kind of conditions, it tries to figure out what the front's supposed to be. So it readjusts the front because it's plugged right here. However, and I'm not sure, is it like manufacturing deviations or something like that, my bike without front sensor was performing really poorly in the front. Front was too soft, not stable enough, and so on and so forth. And there was no much of a change you can do, because through the menus on a DDC you can adjust the rebound and the compression for the shock, but you cannot adjust the rebound and compression separately for the forks unless you connect the sensor. So for the forks there is just a DMP, just one parameter, DMP, which goes for damping. That's all you can have. And so increasing or decreasing, it's not really helping, because sometimes you want a different setting for rebound only, not for compression, for example, or vice versa. Now, the front sensor is mentioned in the BMW user manual, and you can buy it for 2D from 2D or wherever sells them. So, sensor costs approximately 470 euros, I think, plus shipment price, and it comes with installation kit, but there is a problem. So the standard installation kit, it connects a sensor, like a bottom mount connects over here around this area, and it has a mounting point for the sensor somewhere in here, and that's for the bottom part of the sensor. So the top part is just a clamp. I'm not sure if you can, yeah, I can barely see it here, the black one. It used to be connecting here above the bottom triple clamp. And in that case, when you turn forks into the left, to the lock, the sensor will start hitting radiator, and you cannot do anything about it. So we can actually, we provide in the kit also two rubber bump dampers. One is glued to a frame on the left side and now on the right side, and that stops the bars moving lock to lock. And maybe for racetrack that's fine, but for the city use, you first of all cannot lock the bike, so you cannot, you know, lock it properly, because it will never be in the position where it locks. Second of all, on tight U-turns you may be in a danger, because you know, especially if you get used to how a bike used to be, you know, with quite a nice turning radius. Now a turning radius will be much higher, and some U-turns may be a problems in the city, so maneuverability will be highly compromised. So I've been thinking about that problem for a while, trying to figure out how I can reposition the sensor so it would not hit radiator anymore. Eventually I did that, and You see, I just drilled a little hole here, made a thread, and I just added standard mounting point, which used to be in here on the specific bracket. Just unscrewed it and I screwed it in here on the Loctite, so it sitting there quite nicely. Sensor is a parallel to a fork, and yeah, now it's mounted below that point, and I can turn lock to lock, no problem. This sensor now is below that, you know, tightest point where it used to hit the radiator. So it's mounted below the bottom triple clamp at the highest point. So when you install the front sensor into the user manual, it needs to be mounted in such a way that it would have from the end of a, not from the center actually we mentioned, but from the end here to another end at the top when the force completely extended. So you need to, you know, lift the front of a bike completely in the air, hang it by the top triple clamp to the ceiling or something like that. And then you have to add all the preload in here, because otherwise the top out springs would not allow the front to extend completely. But if you add full preload and then you push, push down on the wheel, the forks will completely extend, and then you mount it to have 412 millimeters from the bottom of the sensor to the top. Then it will be in the right position. Right, so I did that, and the front feel changed significantly. Now it actually sees at what position it is right now, so the fork is not diving. It's much more stable than before. And I can adjust the rebound and compression damping separately through the dash. So you can see it here. Here we go. Rebound for the rear, compression for the rear, rebound for front, and compression for front. Okay. So that's regarding with DDC. So yeah, front sensor to me, I think, is like a must to have. If you have a DDC bike, it improves things dramatically. But it has another point, so why this DDC setup is kind of fresh on these bikes anyway, even though we had it in development since 2013. Well, not even in development, we have it in production since 2013, the DDC suspension. Even though HP4 version of a DDC suspension is different to 2015 to 18 version. That's another story. But as I said, again, if you probably don't have any experience in suspension adjustment, you just want to sit on a bike and ride it, then DDC may be a good option for you. But if you know what you're doing, it is better to have manual adjustment available for you. So, reason for that, I can explain actually, why not. So first of all, DDC suspension, it reacts to riding conditions. Like you're braking, you accelerating, it looks on how the suspension travels, how quickly it returns and compresses. An adjustment may happen like every, 10 times a second, yeah, something like that, 10 times a second. Which is okay when you're riding at a low speed, but when you're riding at really high speed, there is no way that would be, that rate would be sufficient to readjust something, to be honest. And that is one part of a problem. Another part of a problem is when you actually changing rebound or compression damping adjustment from the dashboard, it does not react exactly in the same way as if you would be, as it would be, let's say, on the manual suspension adjustments. So you don't get that feel from rebound and compression changes, because you kind of not just changing something to what you want, you're giving your suggestions to electronic brain of a bike, saying, I want a little bit more rebound, and then what you get back is a how to say, accumulated feedback from the ECU through the suspension to you on what it did. And again, it depends on riding conditions, it depends on the riding mode as well, because when you go through the riding modes and the suspension, let's say the softest on the high-speed compression damping, both front and rear, would be sport mode. So in the race mode is a little bit harder on that, and in slick mode is the hardest setting, so whatever you do, you can do like -7 in the compression damping for varrier, let's say in a slick mode, but it will still feel harsh because you're adjusting just, I don't know, something, but not exactly what you would really think you're adjusting. It's just weird. So you never know how a bike would react to the road. You cannot completely trust it or predict the behavior. And that sucks, in short. So, yeah, without a very long explanation, just go ahead with a manual suspension if you know what you're doing or what you want from a suspension work. Another thing to mention here, and this is because I had a lot of problems like that on the bikes my friends have, and I have 3 friends riding S1000RR at the moment, model year 2015, they all, except for me. And so a problem with that is what they all bought used bikes, and people being like working, changing something in the suspension because we probably are not being like completely satisfied with its work. And however, I would like to say that on the 1200 GS, that electronic suspension just works flawlessly. For whatever reason on this bike it's not. I don't know why, but well. So the problem is, but first of all, well, the problem contains several parts to it. So one part, when the user, the previous owner of a bike, changed something, like some of the people change that top eccentric mount. You see it right where my finger is? So on these bikes it has offset 1.5 millimeter, and it's supposed to be from the factory mounted the whole down, facing down. See, this is a larger portion on the top, one on the bottom. So some of them flip that eccentric to change the rear geometry to make the swing arm angle flatter, and that's fine. I mean, this is what you want from a race bike, because it's probably that setup is caused because the bike is originally designed to have a passenger, maybe 2, and that creates all sorts of a problem which I mentioned later. But yeah, some of these bikes have this eccentric swapped, like flipped around. And another part of a problem is what with a time. So the bike, by looking at the repair manual from BMW, the repair manual says clearly what all the components of a rear suspension supposed to be assembled when the bike is loaded. Well, not loaded with a weight, but at least with some portion of its own weight. So the rear suspension is compressed. So I do it when the bike is sitting on a side stand, when I retighten all the bolts. So what I did on this bike as well, when I got it, I noticed that the swing arm angle is too steep. And so what I did, I basically loosened all the bolts in the, so there's a top shock mounting bolt right where inside that eccentric. There is another shock mounting bolt right where on the tip of a triangle. There is one more bolt connecting the triangle to this rod. Another bolt is on the other side, located under this plastic bit over here. I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but it's right here. You need to remove the plastic to access it, but it's right here. And another bolt which holds the triangle to the swing arm. Let me see if I can show it to you, maybe. Yeah, it's right where. So I loosened all the bolts, and I noticed every time when I loosened the bolt, the bike would sink down and down. That means that from the factory, at least on this bike, all the bolts were tightened, there was no load in the rear, so swing arm was not compressed, and the shock was not compressed a little bit. And so what happens when, with the time, when you ride the bike, because, well, imperfect friction between all these components, the bike will start sinking little by little, unpredictably, until it finds its way somewhere in that, when you're riding over bumps, and that gives instability to 0-point adjustment of this sensor. So all this, what I mentioned before, so imperfect assembly at the factory, plus if people doing some changes themselves, that will create the sensor to read the 0 position for whatever position it's at incorrectly. So, and I wasn't sure, like when I did these little like changes, when I released like loosened the bolts and retightened them to the right specification, I noticed that my rear now is in trouble. So it doesn't really work very well. It became too harsh, too much of a rebound damping. Like rebound damping was not too much, but at least not enough. So it was too quick. Rebound damping, rear of a bind kicking me, and so on and so forth. It wasn't pleasant to ride on it at all. And I tried to troubleshoot it. I tried to adjust some settings through the dashboard. Nothing really helped very well. So changes through the dashboard were noticeable. I tried to calibrate the bike through the dashboard. That didn't help too. And I noticed that my bike couldn't calibrate anymore when it's sitting on the stand like this one. And I said, okay, so what's going on? Because my previous experience with electronic suspensions, like on a 1200 GS, there is a 0-point calibration. And I thought, okay, so maybe there is such a thing for this sensor too. And I managed to get a user manual for the race calibration kit 3, and they do mention that as well in there. So if you do any changes in the geometry in the rear, you need to reset the 0 position. And it's not done through the dashboard. It's not that calibration. It's a different calibration. And if you don't have race calibration kit, then your dealer, like a BMW dealer, I mean, can do it for you. And so I brought a bike, and to do the 0-point calibration, again, the procedure which described in the service manual is the following. So you need to have your bike, so first of all, the preload needs to be completely removed from the shock spring and from the fork spring. So preload adjuster for the shock spring is located right here, and the factory position is all preload out, so the bolt is completely unscrewed, not like completely out. It's just you turn it counterclockwise until you feel resistance, and same for the front forks. And when I calibrated the bike first time, 0-point position at the dealership, when the bike was sitting on a side stand, and I took it for a ride, and immediately I noticed the improvements in the suspension work. It was almost perfect. Well, perfect in terms of what it can do, not what I would do with a manual adjustment, but. And then I came back to the dealership and said, okay, let's try to calibrate on the bike sitting on the auxiliary stand like this. And we did the calibration again, and things improved even further. So I strongly believe that 0-point calibration needs to be done when the bike is sitting on the auxiliary stand like this, and when your suspension work will be much better than before. And so after that you can add preload to the shock, to whatever you like, you know, to combat some understeering coming off the corners, like bike running wide and things like that. And after that you could do a calibration to whatever changes you did after 0-point through the dashboard. So the bike will take into account the difference between the 0-point and the current position. And again, if you did that initial calibration at the side stand, the 0-point position, then you need to do subsequent calibration through the dashboard after your changes when the bike is sitting on the side stand. If you did initial calibration and the bike sitting on the auxiliary stand, or just sitting under own weight with a wheel on the ground, you need to do subsequent adjustments or recalibration through the dashboard and the bike in the same position again, under its own weight or sitting on the same auxiliary stand. And that's it. So that's a cure. So if you got a bike like this with a DDC, I would strongly recommend you to loosen all the bolts I mentioned before, the shock and the linkage, so it would sink to its dead end position, and then go to a dealership, like flip the eccentric, so eccentric is supposed to be facing hold down for the DDC to work properly, and then go to your dealership, like remove all the preload from the shock and from the forks, and ask them to calibrate a 0-point position with their diagnostic system, which we definitely can do. And if they would say they cannot, just tell them to try to search for it once over again, and they will find it eventually. And so that's it, right? When you will be at the right setup in the rear. Alright, so that's a DDC setup. Again, if you have a manual adjustment bike, you don't care about any of this, you can do whatever you like, just change whatever you like in the geometry, change the eccentrics. So I would flip this front eccentric actually to be a bolt hole on the top, and I would change it to eccentric from the 2012 model which has a 2.5 millimeters, so I would try to squash the back of a bike even further, so the swing arm angle will be even flatter than it is right now. But again, if you have a DDC and if you do all of that, the DDC will get out of its brain because it would not know the characteristics of, well, it will operate taking into consideration incorrect linkage to shock, well, transmission ratio, because the linkages on this S1000RR bikes are very progressive. So 2012 to 2014 was extremely progressive linkage. It was different linkage than this one. And a different shock length as well. So on this one shock length is, what it is, 353, I think, millimeters. On the 2012 model it was 310 millimeters, I think. And 9 to 10 model years were 314. Same linkage, but different pivot mount point here. Right? So yeah. So that's why DDC is bad. So you cannot do too many changes to a bike, you know. If you're trying to get off like its predefined positions, it will go mad. Alright, so what I mentioned about the passenger. So I had a passenger kit on this bike and I removed it. So these bolts, nice bolts, black bolts you see here are from HP4 single seater, and they cost a lot but they look nice, much nicer than the white bolts, ugly bolts on S1000RR single seater. And I strongly believe that the bikes like this, they should never come as a passenger packet with a passenger package per se. These are all single seaters. You cannot do too many compromises in the suspension action. So you set it up to ride fast, and that's just for one person. And our, I don't know, 50 kilograms at the back will screw things completely. But anyway, it's, this is how it is. For some reason they still cannot figure it out. They think that this is a touring bike. Anyway. Yeah, so that's why the links are very progressive on S1000RR, because we have soft spring, and if the link would be more linear, you would not be able to ride up to on this bike. So we go for these compromises, which damage some of the handling characteristics, unfortunately. But there are some aftermarket options available for suspension links, which make it more linear, but I never tried any of those, so cannot comment on that. And again, if you have a DDC bike, you don't do that, because otherwise DDC would be completely out of its mind. Right, okay. So what else can I say? Yeah, so a little bit about the differences in the rear end between 2012 and 2015 and 17 model years. So in 2012, the linkage was different, as I mentioned before. The swing arm pivot point was higher by 3 millimeters on this bike. In 2009-2010 models, it was lower than the 2012 by 4 millimeters and lower than this one by 1 millimeter. So yeah, that was just how it was for whatever reason. So we tried to find the position here to, you know, make a better anti-squat and corner exit characteristics. And I think the right position is probably something around this, as it is on this bike. Maybe even just 1 millimeter down would not hurt, but again, because I have DDC, I would not do any of that, unless I decide to convert. Alright, so I stuck with this specific configuration, and that's it. So if you have 2012 bike, or 12, 13, 14, you can achieve this geometry by buying this part. So this part is just now eccentric, which is available from Alpha Racing in different offsets. So if you buy one which is with a hole lower by 3 millimeters, when your swing arm pivot point will be exactly in the same position as on this bike. And then you probably can even convert 2012 suspension, if you find that being too harsh because of over progressive link, into the same as you have on a 2015 and up bikes. So you buy aftermarket part for this point, minus 3 millimeters for 2012, 13, 14. And you buy a top shock mount eccentric, that one, with a whole 1.5 millimeter offset instead of 2.5 you have. mount it, hold down. You need to buy a manual adjustment shock, which are available on eBay for quite cheap, from 2015 model. Mount it in, and you need to buy the linkage as well. So we need to buy the linkage from HP4 or 2015 and up. One problem you may face on 2012 model is that bottom part of the linkage may actually touch the exhaust can, not the end can, but this big can under the engine. It may or it may not, I don't know, I never tried, because when I did the conversion, my 2012 model already had a Krapovich full system on it with HP race power kit. So I never had this problem. So on a standard exhaust you may face that problem, that it will hit the bottom, but you need to measure and figure it out. Maybe it will be fine, or maybe you can modify the bottom can a little bit so it would not touch there. But I'm trying to say, yeah, and another bit you need to do, you need to buy a chain, 120 links chain, because you can notice in the model year 2015 and up, the swing arm, the rear wheel axle is moved to the back of a bike by 16 millimeters, and that is the length of a link of a chain on each side. So basically you need to, 2012, 13, 14, including HP4, so for those years, have a shorter wheelbase, because we use 118 links chain and this bike uses 220 links chain. But you can all do that. I mean, it's all doable, so you can convert the rear suspension geometry on a 2012 bike to this configuration easily. Well, we'll spend some time on the parts, but there's no technical trouble to that. So front geometry, again, on this bike, the forks are almost flush with the top triple clamp, as you can see here. And what I measure, usually I measure the distance between this point and the golden tube when it meets the dust cover, whatever, what's the name of it in English, my god, dust seal, yeah. So from this point to the bottom of a triple clamp, like whatever, I won't be able, but you understand what I'm talking about. So from this point to the bottom of a triple clamp on 2015 and up, it is 216 millimeters. It's actually more precise to set the fork position by using that measurement, comparing to what to measure, like to one just measuring from the top of a top triple clamp, because that may tilt a little bit, and so when you move forks up and down, so you may read the position incorrectly. So that's yeah, so that's about the suspension. So you can achieve this setup from 2012, 13, 14, front and rear, really nicely. Again, so forks on HP4 bikes, 15 and up, don't have any adjusters in the bottom. So on a 2012, 13, 14 model of S1000RR, there will be a compression damping adjustment adjuster right here. And so that is on the both legs. So 2012, 13, 14 had adjustment for compression in each fork and rebound in each fork. So rebound adjuster on both are located here on the top. Starting from 2015, so there will be no more adjusters in the bottom for DDC and non-DDC versions. And one leg, if it's a manual adjust system, one leg will be compression and another leg will be rebound. So it's asymmetrical setup. And I'm not sure, I probably don't like that. I like symmetrical things on the motorcycles. It's probably to, well, some say that it is to improve the suspension action. I think it's just a way to make cheaper suspension. Less parts. So I think, so you have 2012 forks, just keep whatever they are. And actually, some people say that it's too quick of a rebound, too quick of a compression on 2012. Sorry, and too slow compression 2012 models. So the problem there is a little bit with an oil. So the oil, I think on a 2012, 13, 14 is too thick. So I think originally it was 7.5 and it went to 10, but different manufacturer. You probably need, if you play, let's say with oil weights, and you go down to 5, maybe 2.5 even, you just need to experiment with oil weight in the forks, and you may probably end up in a situation when your adjusters will be quite high, like maybe, you know, 9 or maybe even 10, but it will still return fine, and it will absorb bumps quite fine with a high compression damping adjuster as well. Because I think the oil as it comes from the factory is too thick on S1000RR 2012 manual adjustment bikes. But anyway, that's up to you whatever you do with the front. Eventually you can, if you swapped everything in the rear on your earlier model bike, you can probably swap the forks to 2015 model as well. Like, you would need the bottom parts and the cartridges, so yeah. Those also available on eBay, and those are not so cheap as a shock, but all doable. Or you can keep your 2012 forks, just change the position to compensate. And again, if you have manual adjustment bike, you can play with the geometry all the way you like. If you have a DDC, you don't have much of that luxury anymore, because the bike will freak out and work incorrectly, unfortunately. So yeah, so what else I can say? So we talked about the suspension, and I think that's pretty much about the suspension. Some upgrades I did to this bike. So if you remember on the 2012, 13, 14 models, it used to be also with a can like similar to this. Was Akrapovic shorty available, which would be mounting just straight to the can, and it was quite short like that. Nice looking exhaust. And the good thing about those bikes with a big can underneath like this, what all the resonances which are important for the engine are all happening on this part. So the end can is just for the looks pretty much, and it just reduces the noise maybe a little bit further. But in reality you can ride this bike with no rear beat at all. Like, it will be still running fine, you don't need to do any changes in the fueling at all. There will be just more noise, but not crazy lots of noise. Like some of Akrapovic straight through systems are louder when this bike running without an end can. So yeah, so if you have a can like this, the end portion of the exhaust is up to you, whatever you prefer for the looks and for the weight. So I have this Akrapovic GP style exhaust mounted, well, not exhaust, but just this end tip and can. Well, it's just a little bit louder, but I wouldn't say it's like any unreasonable loud or anything like that. It's not even loud enough maybe, but it's kind of better sound, at least a little bit, but most importantly it's much lighter, so this is what I prefer, and it looks better, I think, especially from the rear. Big hole, see, nice. What I did as well is levers. These are BMW, whatever, BMW Motorrad part. They are expensive but very nice. The part I like about them is when you accidentally hit the lever, it's really soft on that part. So if you're not catching against it, really nicely shaped, very comfortable. So when I decided, okay, I wanna go for it, and it's easy to adjust, and as you see, just a switch. And they foldable, but if you fold them once, they start to have a free play. You need to disassemble it through a bolt in the back over there, and straighten those metal bits right there. And then again, you'll have no play in them. So if your friends like to joke, we can do just come, and then you have a free play. That's bad. So yeah, just being totally honest with you, no marketing here. So we discussed the engine, suspension, frame. Yeah, the steering damper on this bike comparing to 2012, it's a little bit better, I think. Still adjustable on both bikes, both model years. 15. I'm not sure it's on the 15 is exactly the same, but on 2018 I have a steering damper, is just very well built. So on 2012 I had it upgraded to Auckland steering damper, that worked well for me. On this one I have no plans to upgrade, it works good enough for me at the moment. adjustable and adjusted to what I like, not electronic, thanks God. Alright, so this bike has pretty much, okay, so we've been talking about exhaust. So 2015 model, the exhaust has no this bottom can, so just two catalytic converters welded in there. And so on 2015, if you change an end can to something like that, you will screw the whole engine mapping, so you'll need a power commander or proper ECU remapping. And I guess really if you want a good exhaust for like weight saving and more power, really, truly more power, you need to go with a BMW HP race power kit, which contains a Krapovich exhaust completely, like from the engine to the end can, including both, well, not including the engine, and it has ECU remapping as well, and ECU remap to work with that exhaust, and it has less limitations, different work of a traction control. Problem with that is if you're riding mostly on the roads, that traction control is no longer active on the straights, so you can do wheel spin, you can wheelie anytime you like, for as long as you like, in all the modes. The modes are different. Rain is no longer rain, so it's called rain, but it's not rain anymore. It's just more like, I don't know, something in between slick and race on this bike. That is rain mode in there. So that is really built for hardcore racers, and so I'm not sure. I had it on my previous bike. I'm not sure if I want it on this one because I'm getting older and not doing track days as often anymore, unfortunately. So yeah, so that's a bike. Yeah, as well, one more thing. Yeah, and of course on HP4 you have a titanium exhaust from the engine to the end, but with a catalytic converter. But if you buying HP race power kit for HP4, you're just replacing one pipe in here, removing the catalytic converter, and you're getting ECU flush, and that's it. So basically it is cheaper to upgrade HP4 to HP race power kit on this bike, because on this one you need to buy a whole exhaust. Alright. Also, there is an option for these specific bikes from 2017 where all this part from here to the engine is made by a Krapovich from titanium, but it's street legal, it does have can like this. So that system is expensive, it's about 2,500 euros or something close to that. I'm not really sure if you really want that, but it is lighter definitely on this system. In terms of power, it's pretty much, I think, the same, but you still need to do the ECU map for that, because it comes as exhaust plus ECU mapping. You see, little changes requires ECU mapping, and I learned that hard way with a Yamaha R1, when I had to change like system to a whole like system by Krapovich, and I did a mapping by the tuner. And the mapping was right, but I noticed on that bike that I had no like mid-range power as I had before with the stock exhaust. And then I said to him, like, why don't we just measure and see how the cylinders are doing? So we had a custom collector made for it. So into every exit port, 20 centimeters from the exit port, there was like a, I don't know, placeholder welded for the wideband sensors, and we measured every cylinder separately, and we found spots where one cylinder would be running at, let's say, fuel to air ratio 1:9, and at the same RPM another cylinder would be at 1:16. So average was eventually was somewhere okay, but in reality it wasn't running well. So we did a tune for each engine, so we wrote 4 maps, and it took a whole day for the guy to do it, because when you change one cylinder, another cylinder imbalances itself as well. It's all interrelated. So at the end of the day I had that mapping, and so it was done with a power commander on a stand, and when we did a flash of those maps to every cylinder on the, straight into the ECU. And the bike was running much better after that, but it costs a lot of money, and it's not really sure if it's like worth all time and money for a few horsepowers. But what thing I learned, so if you change your exhaust drastically, you need to remap the ECU, and not just average, but every cylinder separately. Alright, so that's why I advise to buy HP race power kit, because that is all done for you by the factory, so that's why it costs so much. And it will run better on whatever remapping you will do yourself, I guarantee you that. And plus, within the race power kit, you can do remapping once over again if you like to, and many other things. If you have a calibration kit too. Right, so what else? Discuss the exhausts. Right, tires, one interesting topic. So, model year 2012 to 2014 comes with a 190 rear tire, 190 by 55. So, and the traction control of that bike is designed to work with that tire, just stick with it. So 190 by 55, we have model year 2012 to 2014, don't change anything there. Now, if you have model year 2015, oh well, wait a second, if you have an HP4 2013-14, those bikes, rear tires 200 and they run cast aluminum wheels as well. It needs to stay like that. So on these bikes 2015 and up to 2018, you have two options. You may run 190 or 200 rear tire. But if you're changing from 190 to 200, you need to go to your BMW dealership and they need to check the box. But now you have 200 rear tire instead of 190. That reprograms the traction control to work correctly with your bigger tire profile. If you don't do that, your traction control will not work correctly. You may end up in trouble at some point. So yeah, so this is what I wanted to mention. So if you can change the tire size, but just go to a BMW dealership, and they currently support two tire sizes on model year 2015 and up, and that would be 190 by 55 and 200 by 55, and both in R17. Right, yeah, regarding the wheels, so again, on HP4 cast aluminum wheels, 2012 and up, the standard wheels. On 2015, 16, 17, 18, you have option of standard wheels, as I have here, unfortunately, or you may get cast aluminum wheels from BMW. Those are lighter and nicer wheels, definitely same dimensions, exactly 6-inch in white, so exactly the same. Basically in dimensions, just lighter and nicer looking. And it was also advised, not hardly but advised, to run those cast aluminum wheels if you change it to 200 rear tire. And it's, I'm sure it's a BMW marketing to sell more of those, and they're extremely expensive if you're not buying it as an option, but you're buying them later separately. But I'm not sure. I don't have those at the moment. I have planned maybe to upgrade to Marchesini wheels at some point. M7RS probably for the street, so they would not break over bumps. Yeah, this is what you have to know. What else? So tire profile is extremely important for traction control to work correctly. I had one of my friends crashing 2012 model on a racetrack, but he was running 200 by 60 or something like that, and that probably freaked out the traction control completely. It was a slick profile tire, really big one, and he ended up crashing with the traction control enabled. Anyway, maybe that was not related, but well, maybe it was. Most likely it was. What else can I say? So, yeah. Oh yeah, let's go through the dash here. Some of the people, my friends, asking me like, what does this button do? So let's go through the controls first. So you have this cruise control here. This is your lights. This is set in the 3 buttons to operate the information displayed on a dashboard or to reconfigure some of the things. Blinkers and a traction control adjustment. Minus is less help, plus is more help. See that? It changes. Now, a traction control adjustment is not present on the model years 2012 to 14. It's present on HP4 and present on this one from 2015. It works in a sleek mode and it works in the user mode. So the beauty of a user mode, you may have your traction control set in the user mode to, let's say, race or sport, but even then you can adjust it, right? But you cannot adjust it when you actually enable, let's say, a race mode. See, enable the race mode and no adjustment at all. So you need to be in a sleek mode or user mode in order to do that. To enable those modes, there is a plug underneath the seat, so you plug the plug into a plug and those modes will appear. So on this side you have heated grips button, you have change of mode button, and you have the start stop thing. Here I forgot to mention, so here is like your emergency button, all blinkers will blink. And here's an ABS. So with ABS you can disable, enable ABS and traction control. So first what it does, it just disables the traction control, and then you need to like play with the buttons to disable ABS too. Believe me, it's possible. Traction control I think can be disabled even on the fly when you're riding a bike, but with an ABS you need to stop, I think, but I'm not guaranteed. Alright, so let's go through the dashboard. So you can see here I have a lot of information on the dashboard. Disable heated grips. Right, so I have my gear indicator, which mode I'm in. I have a DTC showing, and DTC like how much it is configured to help me where, and have a scales which would basically grow as I ride it when a traction control activated or I brake first time. Lean angles, engine temperature, and so on and so forth. So when you, some bikes it may not show it like this because all these features disabled through the menu. So let's go through the menus. So to go into the menus you press on the set button until you see a setup. So race info, I'm not gonna like go into that. It's a lap timer. You can probably like read it for yourself. If you're racing a bike, I would definitely will do. So setup menu, so we enter the setup menu and here we go. So DDC, that says electronic suspension menu. We go in it and we see here rebound adjustment for the shock, compression adjustment for the shock, front rebound adjustment and the front compression adjustment. Instead of front rebound compression, if you don't have a front sensor plugged in, you will see just a DMP. So DMP means damping. So the higher numbers, so positive numbers are, let's say, harder per se or slower action of a suspension, and the lower numbers are softer. Here you have a calibration which you need to hold until it says done. As you can see, let's say my bike is sitting on a side stand, on a stand at the moment, and my all calibrations are done. I don't want to do it again, but the thing is like you just hold it. So if it says failed in any position of a bike you have, it means what, let's say even the bike sitting like this or just on its own wheels, if you ever see fail in there, that's one of the indications of a problem I mentioned before, but your bike 0 point is not calibrated or drifted from the calibration in the factory. So you need to visit your BMW dealership, remove a preload from shock and forks, and recalibrate 0 position. The bike is sitting on its own weight at the dealership with their diagnostic system. Set DRO on, that allows you to adjust the suspension settings while riding if it's set to on, and you can reset this given mode to all zeros to a factory defaults, and you can reset all modes to a factory default from this menu. That's it, quite easy. DDC suspension setup. Next, equipment setup. So here you have alarm system on off, and you must have alarm module in your bike before you can activate this. And because on 2012 model it had additional part like a manual I don't know what's the name of it, but manual to on off button for on the key ring, whatever. It's just control. Yeah, it's a small control for the alarm system, so you can turn on off and turn the alarm system on and off at will. On this bike it's only automatic option available, so if you're doing service of a bike, turn it off from the menu here, so it would not bother you with alarm every time you move a bike a little bit. So next is the time setting, brightness of the dashboard, speed warning, alarm, and you have the alarm. So if you're removing any of the lamps to convert a bike to a racing bike, let's say if you're putting sport plastics on it, you need to turn this off so it would not give you warning because lamps are disconnected. So a display for bank indicator, you can set it to different modes. You can turn it off, it can be slow, fast or medium. It's basically that indicator on the top when the bank angle, current bank angle is shown, how often that refreshes. Usually if you're going fast through the corner you cannot even look where, but who cares. Maybe on the camera it will be shown. If you like mount a camera somewhere here, just to point to the dash. Next, set up DTC traction control display. So that displays on how much traction control helped you at max during the lap or during a normal riding thing. Maybe it's on the lap and it's showing every time, but during normal riding it won't. Something like that. Turn it on anyway. It won't hurt. So, and this is a braking deceleration meter as well, to be shown on the dash, on off. And units. So in here you can change from kilometers per liter, liter per kilometers, mpg and things like that if you have European bike. And we exit the equipment menu. Racetrack. So in here you can set up the RPM at which the lamp to shift starts blinking, when it stops, when it starts, and how bright that is, and how it blinks, frequency. And when what it show last run, and the lap timer, it will hold for 3 seconds that data, then start again. I don't know what that is. Anyway, yeah, that turns on and off bleeper function. So you have a quick shifter. So in 2012, a quick shifter only operates on a shift up. It won't do a shift downs or bleeps. So this bike has, and this function to have it off may be useful for some people who don't auto bleep. Some of the hardcore racers, they use rear brake to unlock the slipper clutch and then shift manually without clutch. Just works well for them. But if you're not hardcore racer, keep it on for the bleeper to work. Right, race lap timer trigger. Set to manual. I don't have automatic lap timer mounted on the bike. Pit lane limiter is right here. And we exit racetrack setup. So that's it. That's all I wanted to show. Oh yeah, one thing more maybe. When you have that set DR and the DDC setup activated, pressing down on the set button will eventually get you into this menu. Rear rebound, rear compression, front rebound, front compression. And this is available even if you're riding the bike, so you can do the changes on the fly to the suspension adjustment. As you can see, I have it all in zeros, because after zeroing the bike and adding some preload to my liking, it works fine on all zeros. Actually, what I noticed when you do any adjustments, because we're not similar to adjustments per se on the manual forks and shock, the results can be quite strange, unfortunately. Yeah, something is wrong with this DDC. The logic inside it is not great. Alright, so what else can I say about the bike? That's pretty much about it. Generic evaluation, like comparing to other sport bikes I had or been riding. So far, if you ride both on the street and on track, this bike is quite a good choice. Probably the best choice at the moment, I would say. It has enough power, it has all electronic gadgets, so it is safe, it is comfortable enough, especially sitting position. So some mention in their reviews that the Aprilia RSV4 is a very nice bike, RSV4RF, and I cannot disagree with that because I never been riding RF. One of my friends had it and crashed it recently, but yeah, I never tried that myself. I tried only RSV4 model year 2010 or 11, something like that, and it was a terrible bike to ride, at least for me. So on a low RPM, when you open a throttle, it rattles like R1 would do with a crossplane. So in the city conditions, on very slow turns, it's not a pleasure at all. So this bike is nice as a cat in those conditions, riding conditions. And I was not happy with like how it handles as well, like that RSV4. Something was wrong, but as I said, I never tried RF. Maybe RF is completely different bike in terms of the handling, so I don't know. So in terms of an engine power, R1 2009 feels like, I don't know, like a scooter comparing to this one. Lots of power, but with power it comes responsibility because you need to brake at some point. By the way, brakes on these bikes are perfect. Well, not MotoGP perfect, but comparing to the competition, they are really good. Taking into account that they have, it's just not a straight line from the master cylinder down. It goes through the ABS block. It still brakes very well, very controllable. Standard brake pads are okay for moderate track day, and street use. But for proper racing you need to upgrade both discs and pads to something more interesting. You want this at least a C compound, just if you're riding on a street too, from Brembo, at least. But these work quite well generically for generic use. Also, so this brake calipers are exactly the same as on a 2012 model, and up to now they are all the same except for HP4, which had Brembo monoblocks, a little bit better quality and lighter calipers. But I did change those to HP4 model on my previous bike on 2012, but I also had to change all the brake lines because these don't fit well, those monoblock calipers. And to change those, it's a pain, it's a big pain, because you need to change all the lines from here to the ABS block, which is located here under the seat. That takes a long time, and not as much as just the work, but when you need to, pump the brakes to get all the air out of it, and without too much of a special tools, it's just really a nightmare. So many points where air could be still present. So don't do anything with the brakes unless you really know what you're doing or you have a proper equipment to pump brakes. And now, what else can I say? But generically comparing again to two other bikes I had, brakes are totally fine. Like, it's fine, very great as a stock brakes. Pads, up to you. Brake discs, well, 5 and 5.5 millimeter would be a better choice. Also, on the cast aluminum wheels, the whole system is different, so these brake discs don't fit those, because these are kind of some strange proprietary mounting points you see here. It's not right, but well, what can you do? This is what BMW decided to do anyway. Alright, so regarding the handling, so there are bikes which handle better than this one, and I think, well, to me again, the 2012 handled better. In my opinion, comparing to this one. Maybe it's again down to the DDC setup on this bike. Might be. but it's alright, it's kind of wear, handling is wear. So regarding the suspension setup and the preload settings, I had a video for 2012. I posted it quite a long time ago for perfect setup. If you search my videos, you will find it where whatever worked great for me. All described with all the clicker settings and the preload settings. So on this specific bike, which applies to 2015 as well, the situation is the following. So you just need to watch what the bike is doing. So forget the sag numbers completely. Roughly it should be around like 40, 38, 40 in the front for your weight and something like 30 in the rear. So for me, what I did, I added 5 turns of a preload to the shock, and I added like 2 banks at the moment in the front with a sensor. Again, that's kind of a wall through riding, because I had it all like at the stock settings and it was fine for me for some time, and then I decided, okay, let me try to do something, and I just did this, and it kind of feels a little bit better maybe, or maybe it's subjective, or maybe I'm just playing with it, but yeah, add it to your liking. So just forget the following. So if your bike kind of runs wide on a corner axis, add more preload to the shock. If your bike like bottoms on the braking, and this is why I have zip tie over here to see where I'm at, add more preload in the front. And then if you add more preload in the front, more likely the bike will again start running wide on a corner axis, and then you need to add some preload in the rear. You can combat some of it with damping settings, but again you need to evaluate it against harshness of a ride too. Like, it's better to add little preload if you're still in a reasonable range, and mess around with or make let's say a compression damping setting harder, because softer suspension is more grip you has, to be honest. The bike just feels loose, but in reality it just sits there well on the compression damping. On rebound damping, well, if you have rebound damping too fast, when you have less grip comparing to if you have rebound damping at the right position. If you have too slow rebound damping, it's also bad. So you need to find a good compromise so it would feel in the corner, right? So it's a lot of stories. This full suspension adjustment is a big topic anyway, but you just need to feel and experiment and see what the bike is doing, what you like the most, or get some good tuner for you. Always tune for the hardest condition you face. Those are usually turns. Some bumpy turns probably would be an indicator where you need to look at what the bike is doing. As I said, for me, once again, I will repeat that the DDC is not to my liking. I would prefer manual suspension adjustment. Also, in the shock of 2015, you only have low speed compression damping adjuster. On a 2012 shock, you have both high and low speed compression damping adjusters. That's just an information. Right? Something else? Probably not. Okay, so thanks a lot for watching, and if you managed to stay to the end of this review, thank you very much, and see you sometime next time. Bye bye.